I had a conversation with Brian O'Rourke, economist at Robert Morris University, and we asked ChatGPT several questions. This is an excerpt of our longer conversation. We're going to jump right into it now. This is an interesting one but I think it's a framing that you might ask students at a macro class, or I would expect students to know at the end of a macro class, which is, why is economic growth important? It's spitting out its answer, but
hmm
as I've taught more, I find myself spending more time on economic growth.
Oh yeah, I'd just as soon get rid of half of the material that's expected in macro and just make it a growth class.
It's such the rationale. So for those who are watching who are wondering, we have plenty of non-economists would watch this channel. Like, why would I be so focused on economic growth? It's really the idea of compound interest. If you know that on a personal level, imagine it on a country level. So small changes in the percentage a country experiences growth can lead to massive improvements in well-being, and like doubling or tripling or quadrupling or more the average income levels over time. And if you want something crazy, go in and figure out what happens if we have a 2% growth in real median income, and see what is the average income going to be in the United States in, say, 2150 for our listener. And you'll be astonished at what the number is and how stunningly rich that sounds. But just like people 100 years ago would be absolutely floored with what average home has 2,000 square feet? Come on, that's the rich people home, right? So I plugged in the first part, and I will read it here. ChatGPT's answer: economic growth is important for several reasons, both at the individual and societal levels. Here are some key reasons. Improve standards of living. Economic growth can lead to an increase in the production and availability of goods and services, which can improve the standard of living for individuals. This can result in better access to food, housing, healthcare, education, and other necessities and amenities. Increased employment opportunities. Economic growth can lead to the creation of new businesses and the expansion of existing ones, which can create more job opportunities for people. This can help reduce unemployment rates and increase income levels. Greater investment. Economic growth can attract more investment in the economy, both from domestic and foreign sources. This can lead to the development of new industry and infrastructure, as well as the creation of more jobs. So far, what do you think?
I think the focus on more jobs is really interesting. I mean, that's, again, most people look at economic growth as hey, let's increase the standard of living, the well-being of people, and that's really, really important. But then they don't talk really about how that happens. It happens because more people are working at better paying jobs as the economy expands, and we're not all farmers anymore. I haven't heard anything here about specialization, but
well, we have a little more coming up. We'll see if it's there. We'll see if it's there. Yeah, the more jobs to me really seemed odd, because the unemployment rate 100 years ago was pretty, at various times. I mean, we had recessions and depressions, but we had unemployment rates in the country of under 4 or 5%.
Oh, certainly. Well, I'd say that's kind of you were talking about things that are screwed up in economics. I think the measure of unemployment is one of those things, because 100, 150, 200 years ago, if you weren't working, you're not going to be around very long.
No.
Yeah, it may not be an official job, but you're certainly working.
Correct. So everybody had jobs. So to me, the focus on jobs is a little bit isn't right. Now, the job opportunities or the types of jobs, I completely agree. Yeah. That jobs that are more efficient, can provide a greater contribution to society, and therefore higher incomes for the individuals. Based on, I did like the creation of new businesses part and the expansion of different ones, right? Yeah. Like, why, how do I have, how would an iPhone exist? And if not for economic growth? Of course not, right? We wouldn't have had individuals who could have taken the time to do that, and we wouldn't have a society that could afford this if it weren't for growth. So, okay, I'll plug in the rest of the answer. The fourth reason they say is increased tax revenue. Economic growth can result in higher tax revenues for governments, which can be used to fund public services and infrastructure projects such as roads, schools, hospitals, and public transport. And number five, increased international competitiveness. Economic growth can help countries become more competitive in the global marketplace by increasing their capacity to produce and export goods and services. This can lead to an increase in foreign exchange earnings and improved international trade relationships. Overall, economic growth can have a positive impact on people's lives by providing greater opportunities for employment, improved standards of living, and increasing access to goods and services. However, it's important to ensure that growth is sustainable and equitable, and that its benefits are shared widely across society. Has to get the last left-wing tilt in on the
yeah, I would say it all right, I'm going to throw this out there. It does not say anything about, other than the inequality and that kind of jargon there, it doesn't really talk about any of the negatives that come with economic growth. And there are some. I mean, there's none of these things that we advocate as economists should ever be taken as all benefits and no costs. So it wasn't asked, what are the costs of growth? It was asked, why is growth important?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really talk about any of the negatives, and maybe that's just a function of the way the question was framed. I think that last bit in there about the international component. So what was it? It was international.
Yeah. International competitiveness.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting that it focuses on competitiveness as opposed to the interdependence that can be created through more economic growth. And again, that stems from the idea of specialization and just how countries can become better off by not trying to do everything on their own. And as other countries grow, we don't have to do everything on our own. And I think it leaves that out. It also and this gets back, this is a deep-seated problem I have, Matt. It's probably psychological in nature, stemming from my intro to macro theory course in graduate school, but it doesn't say anything about convergence and how economic growth can lift those poor countries up so that standards of living is more in line with what the rich countries and sort of, it doesn't talk about the speed, like you were referencing earlier. It doesn't talk about how the speed of economic growth in poor countries can, you can have it be 1 or 2% higher than in rich countries, but that can be so important, like you were saying with the compounding interest.
Yep.
That I would mark this answer down because of that. But again, that's mainly.
No, I mean, I think they missed out on some things. I think you're absolutely right, even on just the importance. And I don't know that you mentioned it twice. I don't think it can be understated. The benefit of specialization is so huge. A lot of my relatives were farmers. My grandparents were on a farm. My uncle's on a farm. When I would go out and visit my grandparents, we would say, we're going up to the farm. That would be the phrasing on there. And man, I'm thrilled that I've never been a farmer. Total respect for those who are in that. But I am so happy that I was able to specialize in a different area. And that wouldn't have been possible without economic growth.
Yeah.
Without the improvements that came in the machinery to produce food meant that fewer workers were needed for it. And that's a little bit of where I get the jobs part. Economic growth can cost jobs in certain industries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, it's in the long run, it's a good thing because those individuals can find some other way to provide a contribution to society while we still get the same output.
Yeah, you don't want to be a farmer, and I don't want to make wagons. That's
correct.
We had some carpenters back in our family line, and carpentry is interesting, but if we're riding around in wagons and making yoke for oxen, it's life is not the way it is now.
Yeah, and I mean, we asked, it spits out a few hundred words. I mean, economic growth, this is life or death stuff, right?
Oh,
like,
sure.
why are so many fewer people living under the international poverty line that they say is, $1.90 a day is often this national statistic. And we'll put up the graphic now to show what's happened in the world and the percentage living under it. And it's pretty stunning. Even as population has been growing, the number of people in dire poverty has dropped dramatically when we all used to be poor. Everybody.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Everybody in the entire world essentially was poor just 200 years ago, and we are not anymore. And that's economic growth. And so the topic is so important. And so these answers were not horrible, but it really doesn't quite get at the point. I think so. So overall, we asked 5 different questions, right? Well, I guess first, what grade would you have for the economic growth question here?
Yeah, this, I think, entirely depends upon what class you're teaching. I think,
fair.
For a principles class, it's a pretty solid answer. I wouldn't expect anyone in the principles classes to understand much about the solo growth model or any kind of growth theory stuff. If this is a class on growth, I'm saying, you hit on some good things, but you're leaving out far too much here.
Yeah. I think at principles, it might be a B in my book, maybe.
Okay.
I don't think it's an A answer, even in a principles. I just think they missed out on a little bit too much. I agree. Upper level, this might not be a passing answer. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. If you did, please click like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.